Hello, welcome back to the Harmony Inspired Health podcast. Today's guest is someone who is truly changing the conversation around women's metabolism and hormones. Stephanie Crasswiller is the founder of Vitality OET and host of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast, ranked in the top 1% globally. She holds a bachelor's and master's in kinesiology, and with over a decade of experience in both clinical setting and coaching thousands of women around the world, she brings the science and the soul into female health transformation. Stephanie has shared stages with powerhouses like Ed Mylett, Layne Norton, Alex and Leila Hormozi, and Shawn Stevenson. And today she's here to break down the calorie myth, fat loss through the decades, and how hormones can either be hijacked or harmonized for your health goals. So whether you're struggling with weight and you don't want that bulge, or you're navigating perimenopause, or you're just sick of being told to eat less and move more, this episode is going to change the way you see your body. So welcome to the podcast, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure. Now, I want to just jump straight in. I've had a few of these conversations lately with my clients and people, women around me. And so I just want to ask you, is it really just about calories in versus calories out to lose weight?
No, because if it was, we wouldn't be struggling, right? And so what it really comes down to is, what does your body use and do with those calories that you're consuming? Because we see this all the time. It's happened to myself as well, where you're eating 1,600 calories, 1,500 calories, you start gaining weight. And then we start increasing our food intake. We start pulling back our exercise, and all of a sudden we start losing weight. And so it's more so, what's going on internally? How is your body actually using those calories? Is it going to convert it into energy so you feel great and you can burn fat? Or is it just going to store it instead? And for most of us, we're storing it instead.
Absolutely. And not all calories are created equal, right? No.
Absolutely not. Yeah, because if you think about it, for example, when we're intaking food, if you're eating carbs and fat, for example, if you're eating 100 calories of carbs or 100 calories of fat, your body will burn off maybe 10, 15 calories from that through the digestive process. If you are eating 100 calories of protein, your body's more likely to burn like 30 to 35 calories. So you could eat the same amount of calories, but burn more just based on the types of foods that you're eating or how processed they are. We know that if you are having more processed foods, your body will actually absorb more calories from it as opposed to your whole foods. So if you had, 100 calories of mashed potatoes versus 100 calories of potato chips, you'll absorb more calories from the potato chips than you will from the potatoes. And so it's not just calories in, calories out. Does it fit your macros? It's so much more complex than that.
Totally. I am seeing a few different conversations going on regarding weight loss, especially in that perimenopausal phase of life. And we do have the conversation is, just eat less, move more so that you're in a 500 cal or more deficit and you will lose weight. And then I'm also seeing the conversation around insulin and being mindful of the carbohydrates we eat. And then there's another conversation more so just about the women's hormones and perimenopause and metabolic health and function. So how has the fitness industry misled us? And what are the hidden costs of oversimplifying weight loss? There's all this information out there. And I think women are getting so confused because women in this phase of life, they have done so much yo-yo dieting throughout their life because most of us have grown up in the 90s, 90s and the early 2000s where it was hustle culture, diet culture, cardio queens, thin is amazing. And here we are over.
Yes. And so the way I like to explain it when we're talking about, how to actually lose weight, because the answer to everything is always going to be, it depends. Every single time. I remember having a professor in university who said it all the time, and I used to get so frustrated because I'm like, just tell me what's right, what's wrong, what's correct. But the answer always is, it depends, because your body is an accumulation of everything that you've experienced up until this specific point. We aren't vending machines, right? It's not like you put in the dollar, you press the button and the Doritos come out or whatever it is. Sometimes we put in the dollar and we press the Dorito button and a soda comes out instead. And we're like, that's not what's supposed to happen, right? And so our bodies aren't these like predictable machines. There's so much nuance that goes into what comes out of the vending machine. Are you going to lose weight? Are you going to gain weight? How does this work? And so the way I like to explain it to women first off is you can feel like you have changed nothing and all of a sudden you start gaining weight. And it's not because you're changing your actions, it's because internally things have changed. And so what happens is when we're seeing our estrogen or progesterone start to decline, our stress tolerance changes dramatically. So before it would be a 9 out of 10 before everything in our body starts going to crap. Where we see, that 9 out of 10 goes over, cortisol comes up, and all of a sudden now we see our hormone production goes down. We see our blood sugars get worse, despite the fact that we're eating less and moving more and cutting carbs and fasting and all the things. We see our thyroid start to slow down. So that means our body is worse at taking food and turning it into fuel and more likely to turn it into fat. So we're not very good at burning calories anymore. We see our liver detoxification starts to slow down. We see more inflammation come up. The energy gets worse. The sleep gets worse. One night of poor sleep can make you more insulin resistant by up to 25% the next day, which is massive. And we know that'll put you into a storage state. We know that you're going to lose muscle mass when cortisol stays elevated too high. And so you're like, but I haven't changed anything. Your stress tolerance has. So before you were riding like an 8 out of 10 all the time, and 9 is what would tip it over. Now your threshold is 5 out of 10. So what used to be this baseline is now completely overfilling this bucket. So it's almost like you have this bucket of what your stress tolerance can handle. And so before it was like, we're just a couple drops away from it overfilling, right? Because we are stressed out. We're overstimulated by phones. We're go all the time. We're not sleeping. We're under eating. We're over exercising. We're the taxi mom. We're skipping meals. We're running on caffeine and protein bars and highly processed foods. And, we're upset with our spouse and we're dealing with our kids and sick parents and our job. And we all hate Jim at work. He's just the worst. And, it's just everything. And we're on all the time, especially as women. We're on at home with our kids. We're on at work for everyone else. We are just go, go, go. And when we are on all the time, when we are giving, that increases our stress, whether we perceive it as stress or not, right? I love what I do for a job, but after I hop off this podcast, my Aura ring will be like, oh, you spent an hour in stress because, you're giving, there's demand on your body. And so what happens is this poor little stress bucket just overflows. And so when that happens is when we see the inflammation, the poor blood sugar control, all those things that block your fat burning pathway, push you into that storage state, telling your body, we have enough, let's store, even though you're eating less and moving more and doing everything right. And so the issue is then we panic because we start gaining weight. We're like, oh my gosh. And so we go back to all the things that used to work, the cutting calories, the cutting carbs, the crazy exercise, the cardio. And that's just like turning on the hose and just filling up this bucket more. And so we're actually increasing stress even more, which will drive up inflammation more, make the blood sugar worse and the hormone production worse, further blocking fat burning and actually causing you to gain weight. And so there's a few things that we need to work on is 1, can we make the bucket bigger? 2, can we empty the bucket? And 3, can we slow down how much water is going into the bucket? But most of us, our only strategy is turn on more stress and work harder and grind because that's what worked in the past to, overflow this poor bucket. And so we are just doing the opposite of what we actually need, which is addressing why is our bucket overflowing? Is it inflammation from foods that we're eating? Is it, order of eating and types of foods? Is it that we're not eating enough? If we're not eating consistently, is it the sleep? Is it the work? Is it the types of workouts you're doing? Is it all the above? Which usually it's a combination of, right? And we also have to understand that as our hormones change, we become more insulin resistant in perimenopause. It's harder to put on muscle mass. Our muscle building signal goes down, our muscle breakdown signal goes up. So we're already in this place where our body's more predisposed to gain fat, lose muscle. And the very things that we're trying to do to fix that are actually making it worse. And so it's understanding what are the things in your life that's like cranking up that nozzle. For me, I can do it like a decent amount of exercise. My body won't perceive it as a stress too much. If I eat below 1,600 calories, it's like someone turned on a fire hose. My body gets inflamed. I start gaining weight right away. And so it's understanding what are these thresholds? What are the levers for you? I also had to do a lot of work on like inflammation and liver health myself. My hormones were in the toilet. Like my estrogen was gone, progesterone was gone, testosterone was gone, my cortisol was through the roof, my detox was crap, my androgens were high. Like I was a mess. And that was back in my 20s, even. And so it's understanding that the pushing more isn't going to help us. The cutting carbs will increase cortisol even more. And we know cortisol will actually make your blood sugars worse. It's a lot easier to manage your diet to support your blood sugar than trying to remove stress all the time. So you need to learn how to buffer that better. It's just, it's not what, bro science diet culture has taught us. And unfortunately, during perimenopause and menopause, estrogen, she was picking up the slack. We were getting away with the skipping meals and the poor sleep and staying up late and running on caffeine because she really, kind of held it together. She is like mom of the house, like she cooks, she cleans, she gets groceries, she gets the kids out the door, everything's organized, laundry's put away. And when she gets sick, the whole house, like, it looks like a tornado, right? Like it's a mess. Is it mom's fault or is it that the household hasn't been doing their share? And
Yeah.
so estrogen leaves and we're like, it's menopause's fault. And we're like, no, we should be thanking estrogen because she's been like, picking up the slack for the abuse we've been putting our body through that we had no idea. So she leaves, she pulls the curtain back and she's like, this is what I've been dealing with. Now you have no choice but to deal with it because I'm done. And so it's really a wake up call of like, I need to take care of myself. I need to actually do the self-care thing, which doesn't look like bubble baths and things like that. It's when's the last time you took 2 minutes to slow down your heart rate and breathing rate? Most of us are like, never, right? Because we never think how important that is to actually slow down, to bring the cortisol down, to create a better,
Mm.
internal environment for ourselves. And instead, we're just so committed to go, 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 go. And if we're not busy, then we're not productive. But busy doesn't mean productive at all. And rest is productive. We need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we have normalized stress so
Yeah.
much as well. We are always productive, we're always on the go, but that's just life. So then we've normalized stress as,
Mhm.
why is all this happening to me? It's you're not registering that you're in this constant state of stress and that, that's influenced as well by your resilience due to the hormonal changes that are naturally occurring in the body.
Totally. Or we justify it because we're like, well, it used to be so much worse. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, my life is honestly, it's great now. I have a great husband. I have a great family. I love my career. It's great. But my body gets triggered very easily. My stress tolerance is very low because of a rough upbringing, from past abuse, from, burning myself out, from crazy amounts of diets I used to do. And so for me, I can't travel and work out. Like my body, it's just too much and I will crash so hard. I will start to puff up. I will bloat. I will gain weight. And it's understanding that even though I've done the therapy and life is good now and I've found God and I'm in this great place, my body does like perceive stress very easily compared to somebody else. And so we're so frustrated at ourselves and we get so mad. It's like, well, I used to be able to do this and I used to be able to do that. And yeah, it's frustrating. But if you try to do what you used to do, you're just going to break down your body more. You're going to be a shell of who you are. And so it's really taking the time to understand, what is it for me? What is my tolerance at now? Can I slowly increase it? Probably, but not in the state and environment that you're in right now. And we need to really reevaluate those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you mentioned earlier on is like there's individual approaches as well with weight loss, and especially in the time frame that we're in. From an Ayurvedic perspective, we look at individual constitutions as well. So someone who is more of a kapha dominant, they might more easily put on weight in this period of time as well. They might have more susceptibility to insulin resistance. And it could be a bit of a longer slog to get that weight off. Whereas a pitta who can build muscle more easily, they can sort of spark their metabolic rate up a little bit more quick. And even then that perimenopause or menopausal phase, they're able to gain a little bit more muscle a little bit easier, which can help with their metabolic function. And then vata, who are naturally usually thinner, like on the thinner side, they can still absolutely put on weight, and they often will, that term, I hate this term, but I know what else to call it, that skinny fat term.
Mhm. Yep.
So, yeah, everyone, weight loss is approached very differently for different women. And I think we often compare ourselves to women of the same age, but we're not all the same constitution either.
Or the same history or the same lifestyle. Like, you hear of people who are like, "Oh, like, just do this morning routine." I'm like, "Do you have children?" Like, they come and wake you up when they wanna wake you up, and, like, I don't have time to do this, like, crazy hour and a half routine. Or, you know, you have to understand, like, your lifestyle, what fits into it, assessing how's your body going to respond, and, like, work with your body and adjustments based on how it's responding, as opposed to what everybody else is doing, because you can't. Even in myself, like, I have a similar body type to one of our coaches, and, like, the way we approach fat loss is very different. Like, I cannot be in a fat loss phase for more than 6 weeks because my body will immediately just flags go up, sirens go off, I start gaining weight. And so it's understanding what strategies are appropriate for you and what are the biggest triggers for your body. Like, what is it going to adjust more positively and negatively to? What's the rate of drop look like, the rate of increase look like? Even like the macros, right? Like, how much protein to carbohydrates, because everyone is so different. And this is why I hate when people are like, fasting this, keto this, low carb this. And it's like, no, because for some people it's terrible. And then you are in this constantly inflamed state, which is the perfect breeding ground for diseases. There now we see diabetes, we see cardiovascular disease, we see certain kinds of cancer, because we're just constantly inflamed. It's blocking fat burning. We can't clean up those dead cells. And then people are like, oh, well, fasting's really good for that. I'm like, if it's not a stress on your body, for me, if I did that, I would blow up like a balloon. Like, for sure, because it's too much of a stress. And so it's really taking the time. And sometimes it's frustrating because you got to work with someone who gets it and can assess these things for you. Because trust me, figuring out on your own, it takes a really long time, right? And we get frustrated and we get emotional, and we never make good reactions and choices when we're emotional, right? It's not the greatest place to be. And it's tough, especially when your hormones aren't necessarily on your side, right?
Yeah. So for women who are listening to this and they're like, wow, that's like a lot of information. And now I'm feeling even more overwhelmed and more helpless. It feels like there's no answer. What would you say? Like, how can we simplify this? And is there a missing piece from this equation when it comes to women's bodies, especially after 40, if they're wanting to lose weight?
Honestly, the most of the time, it's less is more when we're looking at like how aggressive you are. So this is where, eating breakfast within 90 minutes of waking is awesome. It brings our cortisol down, it stabilizes your blood sugars, making sure you're having that protein like 25, 30 plus grams at each meal, eating a meal every 4 to 5 hours, allowing that blood sugar to really stabilize, because we do become so much more insulin resistant and when we're in perimenopause and menopause. Working out, you don't have to do it every day. It's the best. You want to get some movement in, get some walking in, but you can get great results. Resistance training, 2 to 3 days a week, lifting heavy so that you're stimulating muscle growth. Otherwise, you're never going to see it. If your muscle doesn't have a reason to grow, it won't. So if you're always doing the same weights all the time, no reason to grow. We have to follow the same program, 4 to 6 weeks, focus on getting stronger every single week. So your body's like, dang, Steph keeps trying to lift this weight, and every week it's getting more challenging. We need to adapt in order to be able to lift heavier next time. But that's only going to happen with consistency, right? And so we need to do that. But also, sleep is one of the biggest things. That is something that if you're not sleeping and you're not doing some aspect of stress management in terms of doing some deep breathing just throughout your day, even if it's just 8 slow, deep breaths, like a couple times a day, you are going to have an incredibly hard time losing weight, because we know if you're not sleeping enough, you're more insulin resistant. Your cravings are worse. Your crashes are worse. Your brain fog is worse. Hormones are not going to be on your side. Cortisol is really high. Like, we just see this crazy negative cycle that happens. And so, prioritizing those sleep, those basics, those foundations are so important. And once we get you to a state where you're feeling better and your body's actually functioning properly, then we can get fat loss on the table. But until then, that stress cup is just overflowing, overflowing. So the key is we need to address that first. And for some people, it does take a longer time because of their history, their dieting history, health history, trauma they've been through, the lifestyle they have, the job they have, whatever it might be. And so the big thing too is like don't put a specific timeline on it because that's going to frustrate you to no end. And it's hard to stay positive when you're like, I want to lose 20 pounds by this date. And it's like you're gonna
Yeah.
wake up every day and be like, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. And that's not very motivating. It's just disheartening.
And just on the sleep, because I think this is something that a lot of women in this demographic do struggle with. Do you
Mhm.
have any good hacks to help support women with their healthy sleep habits?
Yeah. So something that we recommend for a lot of women, especially if they find they're waking up between like that 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. where you wake up and you're exhausted, but your brain is just not shutting off. Now you're making your grocery list and your to-do list and solving world hunger and whatever else might be on that list, right? What we find is typically that's due to your blood sugar dropping at nighttime and your cortisol peaking because when you are low on energy, body goes up. Need energy, cortisol goes up, provide you with energy, dumps sugar into your bloodstream, but cortisol also wakes you up. That's like your adrenaline up and go, right? And so what we find is if we are getting women to actually eat a bedtime snack, which people are like, what? Eating before bed? I'm like, yes, it actually helps a ton. Having a bedtime snack, like anywhere from like 45 minutes ish around there before bed. Doesn't have to be big, like we're talking 100, maybe 200 calories, but it's carbohydrates paired with fat or protein. And people are like, whoa, whoa, bedtime snack and carbs, this woman is insane. Let me tell you, it makes a massive difference for our clients. It's been insane. And so, what happens is if we are having this carbohydrate before bed, it helps lower cortisol and allows melatonin, your sleepy hormone, to come up and be produced, which allows you to fall asleep more easily and stay asleep. But then, since we're pairing your carbohydrate with a fat or protein, it stabilizes blood sugar through the night. So, we're not seeing that drop. Cortisol doesn't come up, and then you get a nice, good night's sleep. And so, this doesn't mean I'm saying like have ice creams and potato chips and those kinds of things. I'm talking have some popcorn with like a piece of cheese. Have, even whole grain toast with some peanut butter. That's a common one for our clients. Doing some oatmeal with like some protein powder or that like high protein milk. So you can do that too. Even like meat, cheese, and crackers. Like it doesn't have to be something crazy big, just something that has a little bit more oomph in the carbohydrate for you, a little bit more fiber. Paired with that fat can make a massive difference. Another one we find too that helps is yogurt with like a little bit of granola can usually help as well, as long as it's not super high in sugar. But that is something that we find helps a ton. And then just eating enough food in general throughout the day so that your body isn't stressed. Because if you're stressed, that cortisol stays up and wakes you up.
Mm. And just on that with the food before bed, like from an Ayurvedic perspective, we say not to eat too close to your bedtime just for your digestion and whatnot. But we do offer like an ojas tonic, which is a drink, which is the same thing, like with milk, some honey, some nutmeg, cinnamon, and ground dates, because that's to help to support the hormones and the health of the tissue so that you do have that better sleep. And it's usually warmed, not cold, and you have a bit of cardamom in it. So it's the same sort of principle, just in different talk.
Yeah. And then like having magnesium before bed always helps too, I find, because women are like super depleted of magnesium. We know stress will tank that very quickly. And we're not in our most relaxed era, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And can you share some symptoms or overlooked signs that our metabolism is struggling, like other than the weight gain, unintentional weight gain?
Yeah, yeah. So if you're finding like you get tired throughout the day, or if you're tired even though you sleep quite a bit, like for a long period of time, the brain fog, if you're feeling inflamed, so like kind of swollen in your joints, or your fingers feel puffy, you can't get your rings on. But it can be things too like hair thinning, starting to fall out, weak, brittle nails, skin gets very like dry and crepey. These are all signs that your body is not able to utilize and produce much energy from the food that you're consuming. And so then our body is going, oh, we need to conserve energy. And so this is where we start to see things. So we start feeling very tired. It's hard to put on muscle mass. Our gym performance goes down. And the unfortunately non essentials start disappearing, like our hair, our nails, because unfortunately those are not required for, you know, survival. We start experiencing more hormonal symptoms as well because hormone production will start to decline. So pretty much all the perimenopausal symptoms that you can think of when they hit really hard it's usually a combination of, metabolism slowing down, hormones starting to decline more, your body's just not utilizing things well, mitochondrial function isn't super good. And so everything really is interconnected. And this is why I get so frustrated because a lot of people are like, oh, it's just menopause. That's just how it is now. And I'm like, no, like it's your body telling you things. Like it is a signal of like, hey, I need some help. I need some extra support. Please help me.
You've mentioned weightlifting, and we know that when estrogen does decline in this demographic of women, muscle mass also declines. Estrogen helps support our muscle mass. So, with that in mind, what would you say? Because everyone's going to ask about exercise, like the best exercises to do, where to start. And I know once I turned 40, I definitely started lifting more.
Hmm.
And it made a huge difference. But people listening to this are going to be like, okay, so I'm so used to going to the gym and doing those gym classes, the group fitness classes or going for a jog. What would you say to help support metabolism and weight loss is the best type of movement for women in this phase?
Resistance training, hands down, and like low stress movement too, to help keep that stress response down. So, getting your steps in and then lifting heavy. And a lot of people are very intimidated by the gym because you're nervous of injury or there's like a lot of dudes in there and you're like, they're so big and they're scary and whatnot. Start on the machines because, like, what we want to do is we want to build strength. And so, if you're going to be able to lift heavier using a machine, use a machine. I used to be in the camp of like dumbbells and free weights are best and they're amazing. Super great for like, muscle recruitment and just functionality. But if the goal is to build and maintain muscle mass, if you're going to leg press more than you're going to squat, utilize the leg press. If you are going to know you can do your leg extensions, you can do your leg curls if you feel better doing that versus a deadlift, start there because that's going to send a bigger muscle building response, right? It's very hard to injure yourself on those kinds of machines. They very much control your range of motion. So start there until you feel more confident and you can start challenging yourself with, different kinds of movements and a little less stability because, doing a squat, holding a goblet, like holding a kettlebell or a dumbbell is going to be a lot different than just doing a leg press, right? And so start with the machines if that's where you want to start. There's nothing wrong with that, but make sure you're following a program because if you're just doing random workouts all the time, your body doesn't have the time to adapt. And so what we really need is like 4 to 6 weeks of every Monday looks the same. Every Wednesday is different than Monday, but every Wednesday looks the same. Every Friday looks the same. And we're getting that adequate rest in between. You want to hit a muscle group like 2, 3 times a week if you can, but never back to back. You want to give them like, ideally 48 hours of recovery if you can. Otherwise, we start breaking down muscle too quickly. And so this is where, resistance training and lifting heavy is going to be one of the best things that you can do. It'll help you with your osteoporotic risk as well. And muscle isn't just for burning calories and looking fit. It's for stabilizing your blood sugar control. You can have more carbs when you have more muscle. And I love carbs. Most people do.
Wow.
We know that the more muscle you have, the fewer surgical complications you have, shorter hospital stays, fewer hospital visits. Your osteoporosis risk goes down. We know your all-cause mortality goes down. So your like longevity actually increases. You get to be that grandma who's fit and able to babysit at 80 or 90 years old versus being the grandma that's in the nursing home that your kids have to bribe your grandkids to come visit you once a month to play Go Fish or whatever other card game they want to play for an hour. Like, I want to be the grandma that's there making the memories, not having to watch everything from, Facebook or whatever it is. And so it's so much more than just, I want to look fit and I want my metabolism to be good. This is your independence and the choices that you make in your 30s, 40s, 50s completely dictate what your 80s and 90s look like. And let me tell you, I've seen 80 and 90-year-olds look 50 and hiking with their kids. I've seen 80 and 90-year-olds look 100 and deteriorating in homes. And I know which one I want to be.
And when we build muscle, what is it actually doing for us in the terms of our metabolism? Why is it so important to build muscle in this phase of life?
Yeah. So, what muscle mass does is it's very active at rest. And so, let's say you put on an extra 10 pounds of muscle, you'll burn significantly more calories in everything you do, from walking, sitting, sleeping. Your calorie burn increases compared to not having muscle mass. We know that the more muscle mass you have, the more places that you have for sugars to go, so your blood sugar is more stable, which is fantastic because then we know we're more insulin resistant, so that helps counteract that. We know that muscle is going to provide you with more mitochondria. Mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cells that you probably learned about in like high school or university. And the more of those that we have, the more places we have for food to be turned into fuel as opposed to stored as fat. It helps with lymphatic drainage because we know that lymph doesn't have a pump. We know the heart has a pump to move, blood flow through our body. The lungs inflate, deflate, right, to help move things around. Lymph doesn't have that. Lymph is part of our detoxification system. It's how we get rid of toxins. It's how our body gets rid of inflammation. And so the more muscle mass we have and the more active that we are helps move that around so our body can flush that out, which is, again, also incredibly important in preventing diseases, which is incredibly important as we age.
Yeah, beautifully said. So I want to ask you now then, what are the worst mistakes that women are making, even when they're trying to be healthy?
All the things that we used to be told to do. So I don't love fasting. Fasting I've had to do in like a handful of women for a very specific amount of time for a very specific reason. But there was a clear start date, end date, because a lot of people just think fasting is supposed to lose weight, but you have no idea what it actually is in your body. And we don't know how your body's going to respond to fasting either. And so this is something that a lot of people go to and they're like, well, it used to work and now it's not. I'm like, yeah, if it was going to work, it would have worked by now. And so no, cutting carbohydrates, super not a fan of that because of the effect that it has on cortisol, our hormones, our thyroid function in particular, because we know women are so much higher risk of developing hypothyroidism once they hit perimenopause. So carbohydrates, I really do not like dropping them if we don't have to. They're very important for supporting, muscle mass and energy. It's what our body thrives on. So I don't like cutting out whole food groups. Not great. And I also don't love how, when we're looking at meals, we tend to eat so small earlier in the day. Like people have like this tiny little breakfast and then like a salad with 4 almonds for lunch. And then dinner and onwards is just like a gong show. And it's because we're not eating enough. Like realistically, most women are eating well over 1,500 calories at their maintenance. That means each meal is like 500 calories. Most people's lunches, breakfasts are nowhere near that. And so then, of course, you're going to have binging in the evening and struggle with control because you're super high stress, which also can dampen a lot of people's appetite. You're either like ravenous when you're stressed or you just forget to eat, which is a lot of women that I talk to. And so then when you finally get the moment to relax, your body goes, oh my gosh, we're going to have to do that again. We better load up. And so then we get in this crazy binge restrict cycle. And it's like if you just had a normal sized breakfast, any normal sized lunch, you would not be combating the issues that you have. And so this is where those are kind of like the big ones where I'm just like, just don't, please.
And so for yourself and your clients, where does mindset around the weight loss journey come into it all? What
Oh,
do
we
you
talk about it all the time because it's such a big part. You will always act based on who you believe you are, what you believe to be true about yourself, right? So like, for example, if you think you're an impatient person, you will always act impatient because it's not like your body goes, okay, here's a situation. How would a person like me react? Okay, this is what, like, it's just so quick. We always act in accordance based on what we believe to be true about ourselves. And so there's this whole identity shift that needs to happen because if we think that this journey is temporary, so will the results. Then you're going to gain it back again. And so we need to come across this whole who are you becoming? Because who you are doesn't exist anymore. Let's be honest. Hormones, life experiences, life at 20 versus 40, very, very different. Kids, no kids, like freedom, finances, sick parents, the job that you have, like very different, very different. And your sacrifices are different, right? Like I was willing to spend more time in the gym in my 20s. Now, like with family, I'm like, I don't want to spend an extra 3 hours a week than I already do from my family. Like I want to be there. And so the sacrifice and the trade-off just isn't the same. And so it's understanding what is worth it in this time of life. Who do you want to become? Let's start being that person, but we have to believe it and we need to say it out loud and practice that. And so we do an exercise with clients all the time of, what's this ideal person that you want to become, what are they like? What is their routines like? Can we start implementing some of those things? What do you read? What do you watch? What do you listen to? What are the conversations that you have with your friends and your family? And what do you do for hobbies? It's so much more than just what you eat and how you work out, because your environment and your life and just your actions in general are going to have a huge impact on whether you sustain it in the long term and what you believe to be true about yourself. So if you don't think that you're a person who works out, guess what? Once you lose the weight, you're going to stop working out. Like, you have to be a person who prioritizes exercise, values their physical independence. That changes. If you're someone who values your physical independence, your actions are very different than someone who's just trying to lose 10 pounds right now, right? Like,
Absolutely.
your beliefs and what you believe to be true are so different.
That was so well said. I absolutely love that mic drop moment. Yeah, so much wisdom in that. And it is true that like change is inevitable, but as we go through this process, women are almost resisting change. Like you said, we've been so conditioned to lose weight or to be healthy a certain way, but times change, our body changes, our hormone change, and we have to change. And I often say to my clients that you've got to choose your hard, and the hard is to stay uncomfortable with where you're at, or is it's to implement the change to get where you want to go. And I think
When I think it's important to, like, give yourself time to grieve it too, like the person you used to be, because you can be excited about where you're going and learning and changing, but it's okay to, like, grieve and be like, "Oh, like, my kids don't need me as much anymore," or "My relationships have changed," or "What my body is capable of is just different now," and there's nothing wrong with it, but give yourself that time to experience that grief, because I think a lot of people don't realize what a big transition this time in our life is, because a lot of us go from, you know, more freedom and financial independence stuff to now we have kids and maybe our relationship with our spouse is different. We might be dealing with sick and aging parents and they're passing away. Our careers are changing. Maybe we're moving up, we're changing jobs, or maybe we're moving, or kids are moving out of the house. There's a lot of change that impacts, our identity a lot too. And so you have to allow yourself to grieve that part of it, because the more like we try to hold on to it, of like, oh, I just wish it could go back to the way it was. We always glorify like what the past was like. And then it's like when you were in it, that's not what you were saying. And so we need to be okay with like grieving it and, acknowledging where we're at while also moving forward and just giving yourself that grace, because there's a lot going on at one time.
there is, and it's such an important point that you've made about grieving the past, like
Mhm.
grieving who you were, and that we are moving into a new edition, a new
Yeah.
wonderful edition. And we have covered, we've looked at like the different sort of dietary aspects of metabolism and weight loss, and it's not just calories in and calories out. We've looked at the exercise component, adding more strength training in this time of life. We've talked about the mindset. So, what does, for all the women that are listening, going, there seems like a lot of moving pieces, what does a realistic and effective weight loss or metabolism support plan actually look like?
Well,
We'll
the
put it
first thing is assessing where you're at.
Mhm.
Honestly, if someone isn't taking the time to ask you a ton of questions, like how can they possibly give you the plan that you need? Like realistically, we need to know where you've been, what you did, the symptoms you're experiencing, get like we do depth testing with all of our clients. So we're looking at hormones and detox pathways and cortisol. We're doing various symptom assessments. We're doing a food diary to assess that, because we need to understand you, because our job is to teach you about you. And we can't teach you about you unless we learn you. And so you're kind of on this journey with someone together. And it is challenging to do on your own, like, it is, and so I think the first part is getting assessments, get some blood work done, get some hormone testing done, like, write out where your symptoms are at, and that can tell you a lot about where are you right now, because otherwise, it's really, really hard to create a map. Like, if you were to put in Google Maps, like, "Take me to Las Vegas," but it doesn't know where you are, It can't tell you where to go. You could get in your car and drive for the rest of your life, and you will never get there. So, step one is always, where are you today? And unfortunately, with our healthcare system, even doctors don't do that, right? They don't take that time. You're just a number on a lab sheet, and then if the number gets to a certain point, then they have a solution for you, which is, a medication masks the symptom half the time. We're never addressing the why. And so we really need to look at, all the factors, and that can be super overwhelming, but that is the first place to start, because if you don't know where you are, it is incredibly hard to make a plan. So I would say that's like the very first thing. And we do that with all of our clients. And then based off of that, we have different protocols that we'll go through to like really support the liver, to really bring down inflammation, to break down the barriers that are typically blocking fat loss for a lot of women. Because then what that does is it gives us a really good baseline to build from. Because now we can see, okay, now we've taken inflammation out of the equation, we've improved your liver function and detoxification, we've reduced stressors, food quality is better. So now we have a good baseline of, okay, what is turning on that nozzle we talked about that we need to start working on, like a threshold tolerance? What is the things that are, improving, taking water out of that bucket so that we have room to stress the system in a positive way so that you can get that fat loss. But until we know where you are and have a solid baseline to build from, it's very hard. And this is why I really dislike, you know, what the field has done, unfortunately, for a lot of women and what a lot of coaches have done, because I don't think many of us realize the massive impact and detriment that we can have to someone's life by dieting them incorrectly, like by unknowingly increasing their chronic low grade inflammation, by all of these things that are happening by being too aggressive. And what happens is then we can't get into that fat burning state. And then we see dead cells never get cleaned up. And now all of a sudden we're seeing women with cardiovascular disease and diabetes and different cancers that could have all been preventable. But because you were so aggressive and didn't take the time to really understand how women's bodies work, and unfortunately, it's a newer area that people just haven't cared enough and gotten funding for studying and stuff long enough, that there is a massive group of women right now that are unfortunately experiencing all these negative effects. And I don't think that enough practitioners and enough coaches truly, really understand the massive amount of responsibility we have and the impact that we can have on people's families. And so that's my big thing, is like, we need to assess things to make sure we're doing it right. Because ethically, first rule is do no harm. And unless you can guarantee that, I'm not doing it. And so this is where the digging deeper and the assessing and all those things really matter. But unfortunately, the fact that that isn't the standard of care right now is really, really disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what would you say to the women who are listening who is feeling like their body is betraying them right now because they feel like they have tried all the things, they've spent their whole life yo-yo dieting, and now maybe they feel through the process they've damaged their body or they've damaged their metabolism. I get a lot of that thrown at me, that term. So what would you say to those women listening right now?
I would say give yourself some grace, first of all, because you always did the best that you could with the information you had at the time, right? And just like parenting, parents always do the best they can with what they've got at that moment in time. And looking in hindsight, we're like, I can see how I kind of messed them up, right? But it's giving yourself that grace and acknowledging, like, now you have more information. The best thing that you can do is to start taking some action on stuff and realize that there's a lot of unrealistic things out there, and a lot of people that you may follow on social media are, you know, don't have the same history as you, haven't been through the same struggles as you. Their lifestyles are completely different. It's, you have to understand that it's probably going to take you longer than you want to. The sooner that you accept that, the better, right? And just focusing on, who do you really want to become, and start embodying that, right? Do you really want to become the person who never has dessert, who eliminates carbs, who refuses to eat before 11 a.m., who, can't do fun things and enjoy time with their family, who isn't strong enough to partake in family activities on the weekend or pick up your grandkids or get up and off the floor with your grandkids? Like, you have to think of the long-term picture because that makes it so much easier because it's not gonna be easy. You're going to have days where you're just so frustrated, and having that strong long-term why will help you keep going, and you'll be really proud of yourself in the end. But honestly, taking the time to slow down, improving your sleep, having your breakfast, getting enough protein, those are really great starting points. And as you start to feel better, then we can dig a little bit deeper. But you cannot stress a body that is struggling and expect it to adapt appropriately. That's like taking a dog from the pound that's been beaten and expecting it to all of a sudden be thriving just because it's in a new house. It's not. It's going to take time for it to be less triggered and to trust. And our bodies are the exact same way. And so give yourself that grace, give yourself that time. And like I see you. Like I've been through it too, where it's just you feel like you're doing all the right things and it's just not it's not working,
Mm,
right? And then once you find those puzzle pieces, whether it's listening to a certain podcast or signing up for coaching with someone or there's just something that just clicks, it'll change everything for you. And like your kids and your grandkids will be so grateful for it.
absolutely. And I think making that mental shift with doing another diet to actually living this lifestyle,
Yep.
like you said, becoming the person that you really want to be. And that's a lifestyle change. It's not another diet change. So I think that's important as well. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful wisdom. There was lots of micro moments in there. I'll go back and listen myself. Where can all of our listeners find you and absorb some more information if they need it? I mean, we've already given them so much, but if they
Yeah.
reach out, where can they get you?
Yes, so we have a podcast called the Metabolism and Menopause Podcast. So we have episodes on everything from low progesterone to endometriosis to hysterectomies to hair loss to how you're walking wrong for fat loss to all the things that you can think of. And you can also follow me on social media on Instagram, it's vitalityoet.stephanie. On Facebook, it's Stephanie Crasswiller. And yeah, you can message me anytime. I help people kind of figure out where they are, where they need to go, first steps, because it can be a lot, right? Just give me some grace on responding back to you because there's a lot of people who take advantage of that. And I always want to be thorough and make sure, I'm sitting and actually giving people the attention that they deserve as opposed to just like checking it when we hop into my car or things like that. So,
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you being so generous with all of the information that you have as well, which is really nice.
of
Thank
course.
you.